From Rabobank, this is a Rabo Research Food and Agribusiness podcast.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Consumer Foods to Go Wrap. And in this episode, which is recorded on the 26th of May, we're wrapping up the month of May. And this is the 7th or 8th time in a row that we're wrapping up the month. And in previous episodes, we had so much to talk about, and it's no different in this episode. Maria, let's kick off with you. What do you think is the most important thing for our audience to know about that you noticed in May?
Hello, Cyril. Hello, everybody. And it keeps being very busy in terms of news flow. I will skip geopolitics because that is very repetitive. So I will focus on perhaps the most recent news, which is Uber Eats launching a takeover bid and repeating it and improving it over Delivery Hero. Mm-hmm. I think this is perhaps the last round for the time being that we can see in delivery platforms consolidation, excluding China, of course. So we have now DoorDash plus Deliveroo. We had Prosus buying Just Eat Takeaway, and now is Uber Eats and Delivery Hero. What does it mean? Well, it means for some countries nothing changes very much, but it definitely means that Uber Eats reinforces strongly its position in the Middle East and also in Italy and Spain, where they were smaller and Delivery Hero via Glovo was very big. And in the Nordics, where they were sort of mid-sized and they had a strong competition from Volt, they become much stronger being together. So the positions in the market start to consolidate and start to be more cast in iron. Next round is, well, obviously greater pricing power versus their clients on both sides, so both ends, so restaurants, retailers, and of course the consumers. So I think it's a very big movement.
Yes, very interesting. And a indication that the delivery sector is maturing. It's been maturing for a while, but that's then consolidation happens, obviously. So very important.
And clearly, there's not much more to gain organically. The growth is going to be much slower. Keep in mind that most of the growth that we are seeing now is not from the restaurant side, is from adding new strings already.
Yes.
So growth rates are not the same what they used to be. So now is the landscape is more to focus on profitability and on returns. So this is what is going on.
I love it. The real world. Delivery has entered the real world.
I think the days of cash burn renters probably are over as fashion for the time being.
Yes. Okay, let's move to the other part of the real world. Well, discuss the US. Tom, what's new?
It all feels like a simulation sometimes. So lots going on here, and a little bit of political reshuffling. I know Maria avoided it somewhat. It's hard to avoid these days. But we have had a bit of a shakeup with the FDA here in the US. We've seen McCary resign after pressure from Trump due to a slew of things, including fruit-flavored e-cigarettes, which McCary McCary is a Maha guy, but he was seemed to be against the fruit-flavored e-cigarettes. And he is replaced by a lawyer and a food guy, one of the first food guys that we've seen in the FDA, because historically they've been more medical doctor, background on that side. So Kyle Diamandis has stepped in and as acting commissioner. So that's going to be an interesting shift. It adds, of course, to the uncertainty that we have, which is ever present. We've got unclear direction right now, risk of delays and reversals of various regulations. And ultimately, what I think is interesting about this for food and beverage is the fact that this is a guy with a food background. And so perhaps this brings more attention and more regulation and faster pressures to the changes that they've been looking to make within the food and beverage space for some time now. So that's what I'm watching out for. Yeah, of course, increased uncertainty, but at the same time, perhaps it does just mean more pressure on regulations in food and beverage, which is, things like ingredients, additives, labeling requirements, and so on. So
That could be interesting. Yeah, because this is the labeling adjustments and perhaps more regulation is something that was in the pipeline, I guess, anyway, but it didn't necessarily come to fruition under Mara and RFK Jr.
Yeah, it's just maybe was taking a back seat to some of the other issues, but now that it's a food and beverage person, it might be more higher priority.
Yeah. Okay.
So it seems that we will have more clarity in the end.
We'll see. Time will tell. I might,
I want,
that would be
I want to
great.
be
Clarity would
optimistic,
be
so it means
fantastic.
more uncertainty, but in the future, perhaps, the food agenda moves a bit faster.
Yeah.
Maybe for food it helps, and maybe for say pharmaceuticals they take a bit more of a back seat. I don't know, but it's something to keep your eye on and pay attention to, because a lot of companies are thinking, what do we have to, what changes are we going to have to make to our labeling requirements? What ingredients are going to be okay? So it's a spaghetti bowl of change right now, as far as those types of ingredients and so on goes.
Yeah, clear. Okay, moving back to Europe and confusing a few sections, I guess, within the usual setup of the Consumer Foods to Go Wrap podcast, which is hello and welcome, which is we already did, and this is the menu section. But I'm going to sort of jump between this and a podcast that we launched as a Consumer Foods to Go special on the 26th, actually today, the day that we're recording, covering the Private Label Manufacturing Associations, the PLMA trade show in Amsterdam. It's a 40-minute podcast. Please have a listen to that, because it gives you all the insights on what we've learned at the PLMA. But there's a few things perhaps to highlight that we didn't address completely in that podcast, or just as a quick summary. I think that the most important point that I would like to share with our audience is that food inflation is coming. And while still oil prices are very unpredictable, today it's 99 I see on my screen here. For Brent, that is. For crude, it's about $6 lower. And natural gas prices are at the 45, 47 level. It is very unpredictable, but food inflation as a result of the high energy prices is coming. But what I find really interesting is the response of companies, as in some are really putting their head in the sand. Oh, I've been hedged. So I've hedged myself for all these higher costs, so that this is not going to impact me. Two companies saying, especially in a very energy consuming sector like bakery, yes, this is going to affect every single step of the supply chain, and it will end up into higher consumer food inflation. I think we are, as a group, much more into the latter camp, that we will see higher inflation levels coming our way. And we'll talk about that later on, perhaps as well with the reports that we've launched on the topic. But what I find really interesting to share is that not everybody agrees on, basically the severity of the food inflation that might come. The second thing that we definitely didn't talk about in the podcast is new stuff. New products, innovation, and I didn't see that much. At the private label show, you usually see, fast following to brands, and because that's what we discussed also last year, where we talked about the price gap, and that premium private label definitely has a role to play. We produced a note on that. Please reach out if you want to like to have it. But we didn't see a lot of premium products or premium innovation. Yes, protein products were there. Fiber was a theme. You did see some changes in the packaging materials. But I was a bit surprised that we didn't see more novel or new stuff compared to my expectations, at least. And I can say our expectations. So the trade show, great as always. But I think those two things were really a highlight for me, as in a range of opinions around food inflation, and sort of the lack of true novel ideas. But that may also have to do with the environment that we're currently in, the economic environment that we're in. So lots going on and lots to share on that. Let's go to the next section of our Consumer Foods to Go wrap, podcast, which is the specials. Research that we as Rabo Research have published, and we believe that should be highlighted to you. Let's go with you, Tom. I think there's actually two that you would like to highlight. One is inflation related.
One is inflation related, yeah. And as we started out the year, I remember saying on an early podcast that inflation was going to be coming back this year, just due to a number of factors. But it was modest inflation. But with what's going on in Iran, it is quite inflationary at this point. And we've come out and said with this new report that we're expecting over the next 18 months, 4 to 7% inflation ranging, on a annual basis across the various months. That's a big step up, and that's approaching what we saw back in 2021, 2022. And it simply comes back to the impacts of the energy side and the way that the energy markets flow through the entire global economy, obviously, but through the food system specifically. And if you compare, say, 1970s, the impacts of oil in that period, the way energy was integrated into food was much less direct. We ran a comparison looking at that. Ours, like a 10% increase in energy in oil prices was a 0.02% increase in food inflation. But now it's, a 10% rise in energy in oil is a 0.5% to even 1% increase in food CPI for the US. So we've tracked kind of that trickle through of energy in the food space to say, hey, here's our forecast across these various core inputs and from resins to animal proteins, and here's how it looks as far as an aggregate food CPI for the US. And it's mid to high single digits. It's on top of already 36% inflation since the pandemic. It's coming at a time where the big difference between 2021 and 2022 is this time around consumers don't have a lot of money. We had these COVID packages, payout packages back in 2021, 2022, which resulted in over $2 trillion of excess savings, and consumers were spending, very frivolously. They were out enjoying expensive meals out and so on, and so they spent aggressively. This time, that's the big difference. This time, we don't have that demand, so it's going to be more frugal spending, more pulling back, pantry stretching, and so on. So the supply side is inflationary, the demand side not so much.
Yes, there's a great chart in your report, which you co-wrote, by the way, with Steve Rennicliffe, is on savings or complete lack of savings amongst the US consumer for the last, year or 18 months?
We're now negative 1 trillion excess savings versus the 2 trillion excess savings during the pandemic. And it's a massive shift from the excess savings we saw during the previous, inflationary period. So it's going to be a different pass through of cost this time. Demand is not going to be so much a factor. But I also I should give a shout out to my team, the global research team who have provided inputs and support to this, because understanding the flow through of these costs in the system is not an easy feat. And we fortunately have a very strong global team of analysts that can help with the inputs. And like you said, Steve Rennicliffe was a co-author with me on it. So
yes. Interesting what you say about the negative excess savings. Maria, Europeans are still bringing money to the bank, and us as a bank, every day. The savings rates are different, which is another economic effect, which also has impact on the food sector.
No, totally, because the consumer confidence here still has some relevance, and we will write something about inflation and all that soon. But what I already noticed is that indeed savings are still going on strong. However, the appetite to spend is very, very low. So also that is different compared to 2022. 2022, perhaps not so much in food at home, because we were coming out of our fair share of eating at home. But there was some kind of appetite for traveling, no matter at what price, going out, no matter at what price, because we were coming out of lockdowns. We were eager to spend. Right now, the mindset is completely different.
Yeah.
So
now Taylor Swift became a billionaire on the back of that mindset. But
and keep in mind something, that the one that has the savings is one, but there is other people that are still struggling.
Yeah.
And We have seen a taste of that with the first figures about occupancy rate at hotels up to the month of April in Europe. Turns out that the luxury hotels are doing okay, and the value and entry price are not doing okay. No. So, yes, we are better off. We have savings. It's a different country. It's a different continent. But it may also have very strong consequences on what people want to spend on and how much they want to be paying for their food. So it doesn't mean that food suppliers in Europe are going to have a very easy time.
No. Okay, that's inflation again, and people who are listening, I got feedback from a listener, and I'm sure he's listening again, that that is a bit of doom and gloom because we're talking about inflation so much. So talk about something else, Tom. We did another great report at Rabo Research. Can you give us the highlights?
Yeah, JP Farsard is an analyst here in the US. He's just finished a report, or that'll be released very soon. It's just in the final stages on nutrient density, which is, not a new topic per se, but the way that the consumers are looking at it and the way that technology is influencing its usage is interesting. It's going to change the way we're eating. It's going to change innovations in foods potentially, because things are kind of coalescing into, where technology is meeting consumers with the changes they want to meet, they want to make in their diets. And so we could finally see a shift in consumers actually started to eat healthier after, how long have we been saying, consumers want to eat healthier, it's important to them forever. And we're starting to see a shift. And so this report kind of documents what nutrient density looks like. Of course, it's an evolution from the NRF, which is the nutrient-rich food index, is a ratio of the nutrients you want and nutrients you don't want. Yeah. But consumers are reframing value in food in general. It's not just how many calories can I get per dollar. It's what do I get from these calories, right? So it's a ratio of your protein, health impacts, economics, and behavioral shifts as far as the amount of protein you're getting, how much it costs per dollar. And then, you've got these behavioral shifts with GLP-1 and consumers reading labels, distrust in big food, new nutrition guidelines, kind of all these things are coalescing into these major shifts. And so this report introduces biological efficiency, so fewer calories in order to hit your nutrition targets, economic efficiency, so that's looking at your cost of the product on a protein basis. So how many grams of protein am I getting per dollar that I spend? And premium products often do look expensive on a pack, but when you start to dig into the amount of nutrition in, say, a premium nutritional product, it starts to make sense on a pound for pound basis as far as the included nutrients. And so the bottom line from this report are that I think diets are actually shifting towards healthier. And we'll see, it's probably slow and incremental, but it's actually a change. And we're seeing it as far as the sales data, where the higher nutritional density products, or by that I mean kind of less processed, fewer additives, higher proteins and fibers and so on, they are doing well as far as sales go. And so we're seeing much stronger growth there. So we're seeing a shift, and many products and innovations are moving more into that direction. So it's going to be a positive, growth cycle for cleaner label products and healthier foods. And then of course you've got technology helping solve this also. So the app Yuka isn't necessarily the most accurate, but it's a step towards having something in the palm of your hand that can tell you this is good, or this isn't. Here's an alternative you could try instead, and here are the reasons why. I imagine in the future we're going to have an app that it's your personalized diet and goals, and then the app, like a Yuka app, could actually then personalize the review of the product towards what your goals actually are, and say, yes, this is perfect for your diet, and no, that's not good for your diet. So it's a big part of evolution in the way we're eating. And I think that it's an exciting time as far as the changes and opportunities that are coming as a result.
Yeah. Now, I love the idea behind nutrient density. It simplified. It is currently protein and fiber. But part of the story is, of course, that the consumer, not explicitly but implicitly, pays for the value, as in the per pound value of the nutrients in the food, and is moving away from, let's call it, empty calories, where the nutritional value is very, very low. Maria.
Yeah, I wanted to share here a comment that a colleague made on an internal call earlier about the developments on marketing with high protein. Everything is high protein. I was at a trade show earlier this year, all high protein, even in Europe, of course. I'm talking about Europe, private labels. They did mention, my colleagues, protein again. But if everything is protein, that's not enough to differentiate your product.
No.
So we are starting to see products with extra claims. High protein is not enough. So it correlates very much with what you are saying on the research done in the US. These two have both high protein, but this one on the top of that has other positive elements, creatinine, muscle protection ingredients, whatever. But with everybody adding protein, more nutrients, different nutrients, with a clear message to the consumer are going to make the difference also.
Yeah. Though I'm wondering, though, whether, if collagen is added to food, which I did see at the PLMA, a chocolate with collagen, and this has been around for a while in the US. At the Expo West, you see quite a few of those products. Whether those claims will interest the consumer that much, because protein and fiber appeals to the masses, but others might not. They don't know.
I think, for example, she was mentioning, our colleague Julia was mentioning protein and creatinine.
Yeah, creatine, yes.
Also related to muscle building, etc. So that makes sense, but it has to be combinations that make sense. Otherwise, they may be more difficult to push through. In particular, if you combine one claim that is interesting for a certain cohort, another one that is not a priority for the same cohort, and in a product that is also not interesting because it's not ranking high on the priorities of neither one nor the other. It has to be consistent. It's not just adding elements for the sake of adding.
No. What is interesting about this discussion is that we are heading to, or speculating for what is the next big thing in food. Because protein, everybody knows. Fiber, probably everybody is aware of that trend. But the consumer will not stick with these and will go to something else again. And it's unlikely to be omega-3. It's unlikely to be diet, because we've been there. But could it be creatine? Could it be collagen? Could it be, I don't know. But R&D teams that are listening, they should start thinking about this right now. Final one in this special sections, Maria, is that you launched a very interesting report of the coming of age of internet or e-commerce, but then in the retail space. You talked in the earlier section, in the menu section, on Uber Eats and Delivery Hero, but this is about retailers and delivery to the home.
Indeed, perhaps that's why the other theme attracted so much my interest. We just released a report about the coming of age on European online groceries, and focusing on actual grocers, be it online only, pure players, like Picnic or like Ocado, or also the large multi-channel grocers that are involved on e-commerce. And just reviewing what is the situation, how is it going, where is it going, who is going to keep going, so to speak. Why? Because basically growth is still going to be faster than in total groceries for the foreseeable future, but it's much slower than what it used to be. And at the same time, profitability is not really very visible. So when the different players start to look at this equation, slower growth, yes, growth, but slower, and profits being more difficult to grasp, they need to take strategic decisions. And we are starting to see these things happening. For example, reconsidering the investments they need to, or they want to do. Maybe it's no longer the best I can have, but what is just good enough. And that is in terms, for example, of technology. but also is about where I want to be present and at what cost. Of course, something different is to be digitally present. That is not a discussion. Every single grocer has to be. But this is about actually executing the delivery and the online groceries. So in France, for example, click and collect, they call it drive-through, is very well positioned, but probably it's got as big as it can be. Next growth may come actually from the pure home delivery, but who is going to do that with the cost of the extra transport and the last mile challenges? Well, most likely it will be actually the delivery platforms that are growing there.
Yes.
And not the
it.
grocers themselves. What consequences this has about what kind of, who is going to benefit and at what cost, and what kind of investments and what kind of discussions with the food suppliers are going to take place in the near future is something that will be gradually being reshaped to a more realistic view of who can provide online groceries and at what price and what they want to provide. Will it be more just private label, for example, where they have a better control of costs and prices, or will it be just more premium and that is just for the last mile expensive clients that they don't mind paying the highest ticket? But no doubt it is being reshaped, and we will see more reshaping because of that. Lower growth and still challenging profitability.
It's
plenty of examples.
The other one,
this
one is also maturing. Yeah, but this one is also maturing. So it is very clear that on your message here. We've discussed a lot today from reports in this special section. If you would like to receive any of these, just feel free to send us, any of us, basically, a message, and we'll send the report to you. Let's go to the final section, which is the made to order section, the questions that we've received over the past month. Tom, let's start with you. What was an important question or main question that you've received?
Yeah, so back to kind of talking about nutritional density, actually, a question I've seen coming through is which functional attributes or ingredients are resonating most with consumers, and kind of the question of, do you want to just add all of these various ingredients into one product to have the holy grail? Does that even work? That's kind of the direction and questioning of what do we do? What do we have to add to our food to make it resonate with the consumer? I don't think there's no magic bullet at this point in time. It's very tough to say. We're discovering it as we go. Various products are having very different results, but protein is obviously a big one, but you have to start to look into what type of protein is it. We talked about collagen. Collagen's a protein, but it's very different protein to whey protein. And so consumers are paying more attention to these ingredients and what they're actually looking for. And then these other functional ingredients like creatine, ashwagandha, L-theanine, we're getting kind of complicated in what's being added to the food products. But I think the answer is, consumers are fragmenting into just very specific groups, looking for very different, things. From a demographic standpoint, they're different. From an economic standpoint, they're different. From ethnic background standpoint, specifically very different. So they have their dietary trends and goals are very, very fragmented. And so what I think makes the most sense is you get really targeted within one of those groups and do a really good job of connecting, and then you start bridging across more broadly. So say you're adding creatine, collagen, and a whey protein product for a certain type of fitness person, that then extends into a broader consumer segment who are just looking for a healthier diet, and the benefits of creatine, which are various, are varied, and so then you can bridge across. So we've seen products doing that. So Alani Nu is one type of product that targeted female consumers, and now it's kind of been acquired by Celsius, and then is a much bigger segment of a consumer base, and they've continued to see growth as they branch across the consumer parties.
Which happened sort of with protein, which started off in the sports nutrition.
Sports nutrition, gym bros, and so on. And then you just you grow from there, and you do a good job with that targeting and that product development, and then word gets out, and then
But again, a discussion on what's the next one. And I think we are an interesting sort of, and I hate the word crossroad here, but it is sort of where we are. As in, what is next here? I don't know.
It's always evolving, and with tech and AI and the consumer insights we're getting, it's just going to evolve quicker, and you'll see rapid fixes, and one thing is for sure, there's going to be continued change. But I do think technology will help us be much more targeted in knowing what the consumers want, and the consumer making a choice and innovating for that.
Yeah. Okay, nice one. Good question. I got a really interesting question that made me think, and I don't have the answer to. A lot of the discussions that we are having with clients of Rabobank are about resilience. So how resilient are you to all the changes that we see? And of course, because of all the drivers around us, geopolitical, climate change, cybersecurity, changing consumer, and many drivers that might lead you to think about how your business is set up. The theory says that you might want to move to a different type of system, so less transactional, more networking, more inventory, buffers, those type of things you might want to have instead of, as I said, transactional, just in time, those type of things. Mm. But then someone asked me the question whether companies within an industry or perhaps in a value chain should share more to de-risk, which I think is a really interesting one. So instead of having your own transactional value chain, should you go to a network, to an ecosystem where you share resources, potentially share physical resources, you share inventory, because if one side goes down, then the other one is still there. So you de-risk, or you mitigate the risk with finding a partner company, which may be a partner in the same sector, in a different sector. But it's a really different way of thinking, which I truly found stimulating to think about. Is and not necessarily the sharing economy per se, but the sharing just from a risk mitigation point of view. Is that a way forward? Perhaps not for all, but something to think about.
Consumers are doing it, with Uber and then WeWork, the office space sharing and things like that. It's an interesting concept upstream.
Yeah.
And how this can work, and perhaps already happens in a sense, storage, where you facilities. There's many companies that may use the same storage platform or the same storage facility, but there may be more options of sharing networks, infrastructures from here. So.
Yeah, I think it's to some extent in the smaller companies, in case of need, there has been a long history of one stepping up to help the other, but this is more on the special occasion. But there is one risk there, is to what an extent can you share? And of course, in the logistics side, it's obvious, but if you share too much, aren't you going with two similar companies? Aren't you going to be accused of oligopolism?
Yeah, no. So there may be different industries that are sharing. I don't know. It's just...
I don't know either. But yeah, what is clear is that the world is very complex, and we need different solutions. And I wanted to comment on what Tom was saying of all these small niche, etc., that there is a risk now because there's so much media, so much communication, that all the companies rush to a buzzword before it really becomes a solid, interesting feature. And there is a lot of energy and cash flow wasted because of everybody running behind the last buzzword, be it collagen or blue-collar food, you name it. So there is also things to be quite careful about here.
Yeah. Okay. Tom, Maria, we've covered a lot in the last half an hour. So, thank you again for joining. And the listener, we love to be stimulated by interesting questions by you, like the sharing one, which are just, it gets the mind going. And I'm not sure whether there's an answer, but at least we like to share the concepts that are being shared with us, talk about sharing. On what is on people's minds, and I thought this was an interesting one, so that's why I used that one. But any others, please reach out to us. Use my mail address, cyril.filot@rabobank.com, and we'll discuss your question or your thought in the next podcast. So again, Maria, Tom, thank you so much for joining this month. Yeah, it was a bit more quiet than previous episodes, and not in terms of the energy level, but much more in terms of the geopolitical musings that we had. So it's better. Let's fingers crossed for the next one.
I think it's the hint.
Yeah, and dear listener, thank you again for listening to Consumer Foods to Go Wrap, and we're looking forward to bring you a new episode very soon.
Thanks for listening to this latest Rabo Research Food and Agribusiness podcast. To hear more up-to-the-minute expert analysis, search for Rabobank on your favourite podcast app and follow our channels. Visit research.rabobank.com for more.